Hello and welcome to the Huntington Way. My name is Pearl Sunshine.
And I'm Lenny DeCastro.
And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about school districts and how school choice works in the state of Colorado. So to start off, I know Lenny went to the school choice fair in January. And for those of you who are listening or viewing, in the beginning of the second semester of the school year, we start seeing a lot of advertisements for something called school choice or open enrollment. And so, Lenny, can you tell us a little bit about what you saw at the school choice fair, why you were there, things like that?
Sure. I was invited by the Parents Challenge, and this is my third year of attending, being a vendor using a Huntington Learning Center. And then for the first 2 years that I've been attending, they've been doing it at Space Symposium. And then during the pandemic, they did it at Colorado Springs Early College parking lot. And it was so cool because they had a driveway and we're giving a lot of materials. And not only me, but there's a lot of vendors who are participating in the event, such as public schools, private schools, charter schools, and other services that are available here in Colorado. And then just recently, like just January, we had it at the Colorado Springs Event Center in Palmer Park, and it's a big turnout. There's a lot of people who participate from that one. And as it being said, everyone is invited. There are a lot of students and parents who attended, and also the different companies or the services that Colorado has to offer.
Yeah, and what a great opportunity for parents and families to go to the school choice fair to see how many options they really do have for their students. So to understand what school choice even is, we first need to talk about how school districts are structured and how they work. So here's a little breakdown of the structure of school districts. At the very top is the Board of Education. And the Board of Education are the group of people who are voting on policies related to budget, facilities, personnel, curriculum. They're also the group of people that is in charge of hiring and making that final decision on who the superintendent of the district is. And then next on the totem pole is the superintendent. And this is the district's leader and spokesperson. They supervise managers in district offices. They ensure that district policies are being followed at the district level and then sometimes also at the school level. And then finally, of course, we have principals and teachers that are located in the individual school buildings. These are our instructional leaders. The principal typically ensures that teachers are meeting state standards. They're working towards school improvement plan objectives. They also oversee professional development and teacher evaluations. And then, of course, we have our teachers who are working with our students in their individual classrooms.
I'm so glad that you have mentioned about that so that everyone is aware about what is going on and who are governing our Board of Education. Mm-hmm. So now let's talk about the public school funding. In Colorado alone, public schools are primarily funded by property taxes and state revenues. So meaning to say, especially if I'm living in District 20, so being a taxpayer from this district, I am putting some amount of my taxpayer amount in order to go to the school district that I am in. And did you know that on average, Colorado spends a little over $11,000 per student each year? And of course, if your students are attending private school, parents are the one who is paying the bill. And if it is a charter school funding, per pupil operating revenue, it's also the same as or similar as traditional public schools that the budget that they get.
Yes, definitely. And now that we've covered a little bit of the basics of school districts, let's talk about how school districts are zoned, because that really influences Colorado's school choice law. So typically, students do go to schools that are in their district or in their neighborhood. But what school choice, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, allows is for students and families to move around a little bit even outside of the district. Initially, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, zoning was determined by much of the populations of students that lived in that certain area, which also made it a little bit more difficult for low-income families, minorities to be able to attend schools that had higher quality education. And so there are some efforts now in order to rezone some districts, but it takes a lot of work in order for that to happen. Within district schools, so for example, if we go along with the D20 example, if it's determined that, oh, well, maybe we want another school within the district, or if we want to move schools, then that happens, and those decisions are made by the school board. But it does get a little bit more complicated if there are full-on district boundaries that are wanting to be changed. So the change process for district boundaries is determined by state-decided regulations, and it must involve all districts in the area, which makes it a little bit more complicated. The city needs to get involved, all of the school boards need to get involved, and it also involves written legal description. So lots of work in order to make those boundaries, the change in boundaries happen, which is why school choice is so important.
And I'm so glad that you covered everything that needs to be known by the public so that they are aware of what's going on. And now that we know the basics of school districts, let's cover now about the school choice.
Yeah, so school choice, or another way to look at it, or it's also called open enrollment, comes from the law that is called the Public Schools of Choice Law. And this law allows residents who are not in the zone district to enroll in schools outside of their district, which is a really great opportunity for families who are wanting to give their child a better education at a different school that's not necessarily in their district. Families do need to go through an application process, and there are several legal reasons why a district can deny an open enrollment student. But when it comes to choosing what families are accepted into the school, preference is usually given to students already living in the school district zone if there's not enough room.
Now, how many residents of Colorado participate in school's choice? Do you know?
Well, you tell me.
All right. Over 145 students, Colorado students, or over 16% of the total public school population, participate in open enrollment programs within and between the districts. And then that was the survey as of 2018. And other states have this option as well. 43 states were given the option for in-district open enrollment, and 17 of those states, open enrollment is mandatory.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, and I think it's great that the majority of states do give this option for open enrollment, because I really think that there are more pros than cons when it comes to open enrollment and school choice. Because what better way to give your student all of the possibilities for a better education than allowing them to choose? Lenny, what do you think about open enrollment?
I like it.
Yeah.
And especially during the school choice or the parents challenge, in 2019, there was a movie and the title is Miss Virginia. After I watched that movie, I fell in love with the idea of I can also bring my child in the other districts that offer a lot of activities and other options, not only that I am designated to a district. And it's really cool. So I am highly recommending for everyone to go watch Miss Virginia movie.
Okay, to give a little bit of a history and maybe
Yes.
personal story about school choice and open enrollment. That's great. Now, there are some cons of school choice. So one downside may be that school choice means that schools need to kind of compete for choicing into their school. And so the challenge with that is that if a lot of students leave the school, especially for public schools, that means less funding. And then some schools don't offer busing services, so that's just something for parents and families to be aware of, because that might limit some after-school programs.
Yeah, and then that's the reason why we can also have the benefits of the school choice. The parents have a freedom to go bring or enroll their child in the schools that they like, especially they're offering a lot of STEAM or STEM opportunities for the children. And then that's the reason why we're going to go hear a lot of this when we listen to Deborah Hendrix from the Parents Challenge, who's going to be interviewed after our break.
Yeah, and so some organizations look to provide parents and students that choice, which is Parents Challenge, as Lenny mentioned. So when we come back from our break, I'll be interviewing Deborah Hendrix. She is the executive director of Parents Challenge to help parents make that decision. Welcome back to the Huntington Way. I am here with Deborah Hendrix, the executive director of Parents Challenge. So Deborah, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Parents Challenge for those who aren't familiar.
Well, Parents Challenge started in 2000. Steve and Joyce Shuck were the founders of Parents Challenge. And the whole purpose of Parents Challenge is to support low-income families around their educational choice, whether it be private, public, charter, or homeschool, and then to come alongside of them to provide information and resources so that they can best advocate for their child as well as for others.
Okay, that sounds great. And tell us a little bit about your involvement with the organization.
So I've been with the organization for about 8 years, and my involvement, I've been in education for a long time. I've been involved, served on the school board for 8 years with Harrison School District 2. Certainly been that PTO mom and everything else in regard to education. And so having the opportunity to kind of work with Parents Challenge just gives me an opportunity now to support families and parents, and as we call them, scholars, to just make sure that they're successful in school, K-12.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what would you say influenced you to get involved with Parents Challenge?
Well, it was an invitation to come and work for the organization, but more than that is I know the heart and of Steve and Joyce Shuck. Joyce is no longer with us, but and they have been pouring their heart and their lives into helping families and helping those that might not have means to move to a new school district if the school's not working, transport their child to another school, put their child in a private school, or whatever the case might be. And so the opportunity to really come alongside and support the efforts of this organization was just right in my wheelhouse. So it was a very easy decision to come on board. And we've gone from, supporting 12 families to now over 160 families since I've been involved.
That's amazing. Yeah, how much the organization has grown over time. So how do you help parents find the right school for their child? How does that process go?
So, it's interesting because people always ask that question is, do you direct parents to go to this school or that school? And frankly, no, we don't. It is a parent's decision where their child gets educated. But what we do is we allow them to research and to understand the difference between the different choice options that they have, but then also just understanding your child, because it's important to know if your child is gifted in this area, or maybe your child is struggling in a certain area. Certain schools provide different types of resources that may benefit some children that may not benefit others. So what we do is we encourage families to do their homework. We have a website that has information about all the different school choice options. And then also there's a website itself that allows you to pull up schools by zip code and see all the different schools that are in that neighborhood. Or you can pull up schools by different categories and see what they offer. And at that point, then if a parent comes and says, so I have this list, which one should I choose? So then I can go through and say, okay, well, what did you learn about this school? And what did you learn about this school? And from there, allow them to make the best choice that's going to work for their particular scholar.
Right. Yeah. And are there particular types of families that you work with, or you just work with any families that come your way?
So families have to be low income. So they have to fit the free and reduced lunch category that is provided by the federal government. And as long as they're in those categories, they can apply to be part of our program. So no matter what their choice option is, we support all choice. So it's just making sure that they are low income.
Okay. Yeah, that's great to know. And I'm sure our listeners and viewers would be interested in that as
Yes.
well. When it comes to a Parents Challenge, as the name of the organization is called, what would you say a parent's biggest challenge is when it comes to their child's education, especially with low-income families?
Well, that varies. So it really depends on what may be happening with that particular child. So if you have a special needs child, then you're certainly going to be looking for a school that has those types of services that may be available to support your child. If your child is on a IEP, an individual education plan, then you want to make sure that the school is going to be able to support that because not all schools can. And so it really varies. Sometimes we'll have families that are struggling with transportation and they want to send their child to a school that's not in their district, that's not in their community. And so will Parents Challenge support them? Yes, because they can use the funds that we provide them for transportation. So all of the different situations really vary in terms of, so there's not one need. Certainly parents who want to send their child to a private school, because again, we provide them with resources that they can utilize towards tuition. Those families are certainly excited to be part of Parents Challenge because that helps offset some of their cost for their scholar to go to a private school. But it really varies, and no one size fits all. So I may have families that hear about us because a neighbor has been involved, or they've come to one of our parent advocacy sessions, and so they hear about the resources. Sometimes parents will say, well, I heard you give money out, so that's why I got involved. And then they say, once I got involved, I was like, wow, you guys provide a lot of things beyond just the money. So it may start off as a financial need, but then it turns into so much more because we develop a partnership with each of our families.
That's great. Yeah. And I'm glad so many families can reach out to you and get that help beyond financial help.
Yes.
What are some opportunities that schools provide that parents can easily access and use as an extra resource in addition to Parents Challenge?
So, and that varies also. So, many people think that, okay, if a child is going to a public school, everything's free, right? So that should be okay. So a traditional public or charter school, everything is free. So therefore, I should be able to get these types of services or these types of resources. And that changes sometimes based on the dynamics of a school. But many schools will certainly provide tutoring opportunities if the students are struggling. Many schools have certainly sports programs. It varies in terms of the degree of sports that they may provide. Many will have arts programs or music programs, theater type programs, and those sometimes will vary as well. So families have options of being involved in those types of activities that schools may provide. What we as Parents Challenge can come alongside that if there's a fee for that, if there's a fee to participate in sports, if there's a fee to participate in clubs or something of that nature, our families can utilize the financial resources that we provide them so that their child can participate in the school program, but offset whatever additional costs there might be. But schools provide a variety of resources. Sometimes families don't realize that because they don't ask. And that's the piece we always put before our parents. Did you ask them about tutoring, or did you ask them about any support services that you can utilize at home? Or did you ask about, teachers assisting students, sometimes even during their planning periods or lunch? And they're like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. I'm like, yeah, you can do that. And in doing that, then sometimes parents find out there are some gems that schools do provide that they weren't aware of. And then we try to make them aware of how to ask, how to be supportive, how to connect with their schools so that the schools see them as wanting to make sure that their scholar is getting the best that they can at that particular school. If they're choosing private, traditional public or charter, and then my families that homeschool, same thing. They may homeschool, but they can go back to their home district school to get resources to support their scholars also.
Yeah. And do you find that families who are looking for specific schools, they tend to make their decisions based off of those extracurricular programs that the school offers? Or as you were saying before, maybe it just really depends on the family. What do you see the most of, I guess?
A lot of times families want to make sure that their child is receiving a as we call it, a whole school or whole child type philosophy, so that there's the academics, and then there's the social emotional learning, and then there's the sports, and there's the arts, and all of that, and then there's I say all the extra clubs and so forth, that from chess to Rubrik's cube, or dominoes, or I mean, it's just a variety of things that schools provide. So sometimes, yes, parents are definitely looking for things that are going to allow the student to say, I want to go to school every day because we get to do this, this, and this. So outside of math and English and science and social studies, which are certainly those required courses, that there are some things that are of interest to the child, because that keeps them motivated, and that allows the parents to make sure that a child is well-rounded.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that in Colorado Springs, there are many school options for situations like that, where you're looking for those extracurricular activities, clubs, whatever that may be, to motivate the child
Yes.
and the scholar.
Yes.
Anything else that you would like to tell our audience about Parents Challenge, your involvement with it? Any maybe tips and tricks that you would recommend to parents who are looking for different schools for their children?
Well, one of the things that we always talk about is ask your child what they're interested in. Ask your child what motivates them in terms of going to school, and what do they like to do, and what are their favorite subjects, and things of that nature. Because we find that, first of all, parent, you are your child's first teacher. And it is your responsibility to make sure that your child is successful in school. We hold our parents accountable for that. In that partnership that we create with them, we have, I call it a 10-step process, but it's all about accountability. And it's all about us working with you, but you, in the sense, being totally responsible for making sure that your child is successful. So if they're struggling, get them resources. Don't just sit back and say, well, I send them to school every day, and so I expect that, they'll be okay. They won't be okay, because parents need to be engaged in their learning. We know that students do better when parents are engaged, and that's part of the advocacy piece. We then also provide advocacy sessions for our parents that they tell us that they want. And it could be around math or reading or learning styles or emotional intelligence or anti-bullying, whatever the situation may be. And those are designed for the purpose of supporting families so that they can best support their child. We want them to be better education consumers. And in order to do that, we know we need to bring resource to the table for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you say is your favorite part about working as the executive director for Parents Challenge?
I love it when people get it.
Yeah.
Meaning a parent will say, wow, now I finally have figured out. Or a child will say, I'm doing so much better because this has happened or this has happened. That excites me, because at that point, I know that the families are engaged. And the more they're engaged, the better for everyone.
Definitely. Yeah. Where can people find you? Talk about maybe social media, website, and where can people learn more about Parents Challenge?
All of and above, but our website, parentschallenge.org. Also Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, we're LinkedIn, wherever they can find us. But if they go to our website, that's where they can find out all the information about being involved in Parents Challenge, registering to become a parent in Parents Challenge, or just getting information on how to navigate school choice.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Deborah, for joining us. This has been the Huntington Way. My name is Pearl Sunshine, and we'll catch you next time.